he has something called the concept of inversion,
Yes.
which I never heard about before.
I talk about that a lot.
Yeah, could you explain that?
It's not his. That's a classic logical tool.
Okay.
One of the sad things in modern education, among freaking 10,000 sad things, is, what makes us human is our ability to think, but thought is never taught explicitly. You get math and stuff, but most people, cognitive biases all the way. So you have logical fallacies. There's a lot of those. There's the cognitive biases, and then there's methods of proofing your idea. So how do you know? That's called epistemology. How do you know that you know? Everyone walking down the street here in London, we're in, East London, they think they know something. But my question is, why do you have surety that what you believe is right? When I was a little kid, I remember I was watching Bugs Bunny with my mom. I was like 8, and I said, "Mom, come sit down here and watch this with me. It's so funny." It was Woody Woodpecker. I remember now. I said, "Mom, come sit." She goes, "Ty, I don't really like cartoons." And I was like, "What do you mean? They're so funny." And she said to me, "Ty, one day you won't like cartoons anymore." And I remember thinking as an 8-year-old, I will always love cartoons. And of course, she was right. I haven't watched a cartoon, whatever. And but I was sure of myself. So most people are sure of themselves. They come to Hollywood, they're sure. It's like, Ty, here is how and even if they act humble, it's what I call non-Michael Jordan humility. If you read the Michael Jordan, The Life, it's amazing. It's the best sports book I've ever read. And I know the author, Roland Lazenby, and I was talking to him on the phone, and he said, there's never been a man with more humility in sports than Michael Jordan. Although he was the cockiest external. Like, if you met him, he was talking trash, but I call it humility of action. Like, every coach, Dean Smith, Phil Jackson, they said, if you said something, even when he didn't think it made sense, Jordan actually did it. I'm not religious, but I look for good ideas everywhere. And Jesus Christ said there was there was a man with 2 sons, and the father said, "Go do this." And first son said, "Yes, Father, I will," and didn't do it. And the second son said, "I won't do it," but then did. And then Jesus asked the crowd which one obeyed. So which one is the one who humbles? The one who said he wouldn't do it, but then he did it. So people come to Hollywood, they either act cocky, like they don't need to simulate, or they act humble, but actually they know. It's like, I know. And I'm like, no, you don't really know. Knowing is hard, and one of the tools is what you're talking about, inversion. So you go, what is it going to take me to live the good life? What's it going to take me to find health, wealth, love, and happiness? And I say, well, start much simpler question. What will make you not get the good life? Monger says sloth and unreliability, and that's, I wouldn't.
Those are his top 2.
Top 2, sloth,
only
laziness, and that's what all he says. We don't have a lot of writing by Monger. I think there are other things that you could add to that list. Not that I...
Such as?
Unfocused, lack of focus, being unfocused. I think lack of simulation, for sure. Lack of humility. In my TED Talk, I gave 3, not everybody's humble enough. I would say humility is very high. And you look at, my favorite Sam Walton story. He's the richest man basically in the world at the time. And these Brazilian group of businessmen had bought a grocery store chain in Brazil. They write letters to all the CEOs in the U.S. and they say, can we take you to dinner? We want to get your advice on what we should do here in Brazil. The only man who answered, the CEO of Kmart and this Sears and all, no one answered. One man, it was Sam Walton. And he said, sure, come on up. They flew to Bentonville, Arkansas. They got picked up at the airport by a pickup truck with an old man and a dog. And they said, oh, you going to take us to meet Sam Walton? He said, no, I am Sam Walton. And he said, get in the truck. And he took him to his house with his wife. They had dinner. And the whole time they were having dinner, he was asking him a whole bunch of questions. Almost to the point they couldn't get any questions in. And then they realized they had been tricked. Sam Walton had said yes because he wanted to know if they knew something that he didn't know. The best businessman in the world. And he then later went to Brazil and they got a phone call. He was visiting them and as the police department, they said, come get Sam Walton. We have him in jail. And they rushed down because if you've ever seen the inside of a Brazilian jail, you don't want an old man there, especially not an old billionaire. And they showed up there and Sam Walton open. I mean, they got him out of prison. They asked the police, why would you arrest this man? And they said, we didn't know who he was. We thought he was insane. We found him crawling on his hands and knees through different department stores, and we figured he was insane. And they turned to Sam and said, what were you doing? He said, oh, I was taking a measuring tape, and I was seeing how wide the aisles were. And he said, I just wanted to see if these Brazilians knew something that I didn't know. So the depth of humility, most business people I know, they're not crawling around on hands and knees on the nearest competitor. So I for sure would say lack of humility, and it's usually evidenced by the fact that they're not simulating enough. I think if you read, you can tell. You were asking me about books. How many books have you read? Tells me how humble you are. And if it's not books, it's how many mentors.
Right, or how many good books you've read about people's life stories. Because if you don't read, then you don't give a shit, or because you're not willing to learn or learn from their story. Is that it? And if you're reading fiction all the time, then that says...
fiction has its place, but if you're,
Can you? It seems like it's a hard quality to teach someone humility, unless you give them an ayahuasca trip, or they have real suffering.
Ayahuasca, you can tell you a bit of with Joe Rogan. I'm not a big fan of ayahuasca kind of.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, learn from the best minds in the world, and connect with a community of passionate people building the best versions of themselves. Just click on the link below, and I'll see you on the inside.